Once upon a time, there was this girl who lived with her two evil stepsisters and her wicked stepmother. The girl had to cook and clean every day while her stepsisters and stepmother washed. Until one day, she met this prince. They fall in love, they get married. She and the prince live in this castle and never seen or heard from her family again. And she lived happily ever after. Mermaids. Good versus evil. Supernatural powers. Royal characters. Magic. Dragons are all things that make fantasy stories interesting. Fantasy stories are stories that allow you to escape from reality. Hi, my name is Apollonia Wiles, and today I'm going to do a book talk on young adult fantasy. The first story that I'm going to talk about is the story called Bottled by Carol Riggs. Carol Riggs is a writer of young adult fiction. As a young girl, Riggs watched I Dream of Jeannie along with Bewitched. She loved the magic of those shows. Unlike Jeannie from the show, the Jeannie in the story has limited powers. She isn't able to reach her goals by using her abilities, so she has to find ways to work around those limitations. Adela, who's 17, was transformed into a genie, which led to her being imprisoned in a bottle. For thousands of years, she fulfills the wishes of greedy masters. The only thing that keeps her going is the hope of finding Karim, the boy she fell in love with as a human. Until one day, she finds a note from her beloved, which confirms that he has access to the elixir of life, and that he is searching for her as well. But someone else is on a search for her as well. His name is Farquaad. He wants to use her power for evil. With the help of her master, Nathan, Adela is able to continue her search for Karim. While trying to escape Farquaad and search for Karim, she begins to experience growing fatigue. She finds herself struggling against an undeniable attraction to Nathan. As Farquaad closes in, Adele must decide just how much she is willing to risk to protect Nathan to be with Karim forever. How much power does she really have to change her future? What is she willing to sacrifice for an eternity of love? You can find out the answers to these questions by reading Adult Fantasy Bottled. If she makes the wrong choice, the death of many will be on her hands. The next story that I'm going to talk to you about is called Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Vicious is a fantasy novel written by V.E. Schwab. Schwab is an American fantasy author best known for the book Vicious. The fantasy story Vicious is about two college students whose names are Victor and Eli. They learn how to create superhuman abilities that would later lead to them becoming arch enemies. In the story, Victor and Eli are college roommates. They discover that near-death experiences under the right conditions can create superhuman abilities. When Victor tries to create his superhuman abilities, he accidentally kills Eli's girlfriend, which then causes Eli to believe that all those with superhuman abilities are evil. So he starts a crusade to kill them. Superhuman abilities can lead to good things happening or evil things to occur. If you had a superhuman ability, how would you use your power? Will you use it for good or for evil? Seraphina by Rachel Hartman. The story takes place in the kingdom of Gored. Seraphina is a 16-year-old court musician. She is drawn into a murder mystery when Prince Rufus is found decapitated in a manner that insinuates that he was murdered by dragons. The murder occurs on the eve of the 40th anniversary of the signing of a treaty. This treaty was signed to end the war between humans and dragons. In this fantasy, the dragons were able to transform into humans to try to coexist. However, the dragons found humans' emotions baffling. The distrust and hatred between the dragons and the humans continued. Hartman stated that she had difficulties drawing dragons, so she decided to make them transform into humans as an easier way to illustrate them. Dragons versus humans. Find out by reading the story whether or not the dragons and humans are eventually able to get along or will more destruction come. Thornspell by Helen Lowe. Have you ever wondered what was the prince's take of the story Sleeping Beauty? Well, Helen Lowe retells the story Sleeping Beauty from the point of view of the prince. There was this prince who lived in a remote castle. He grew up listening to fantastical stories about magic, spells, knights, and heroic quests. He wondered whether they were stories or did they hold some truth. He hoped that there was some truth in those stories, until one day a lady spoke to him from a carriage through the castle gates. That is when the prince's world began to change. He began to dream about a girl wrapped in thorn. His dream of a palace. He dreams of a man dressed in red armor, riding a red horse, and that man arriving at a castle. The prince is about to learn that sometimes dreams do come true and that the world can be a magical but an even more dangerous place than he'd ever imagined. He will soon discover that heroic quest he imagined for himself as a boy will begin at that very moment. Thornspell was a good spin-off from the story Sleeping Beauty, which was retold from the prince's perspective. You will have to read the story to see how the heroic quest ends. And that brings me to my final story, which was The Mermaid Sisters by Karen A. Noble. The Mermaid Sister is a young adult historical fantasy novel. The story was about two sisters named Clara and Marin. They were both 16. They lived with their guardian Auntie Verdi and their pet dragon Osbert. Their aunt told them how the two of them were delivered to her when they were babies. Clara was delivered to her by a stork, and Marin was delivered to her by a clam. At first, the girls thought the aunt's story was just stories, until Marin begins to turn into a mermaid. Both girls are stunned. However, Marin looks forward to life as a mermaid, while Clara cannot imagine life without Marin. Now, Clara and O'Neill are on a quest to get Marin to the ocean before she dies. In the back of Clara's mind, she wonders if her sister is a mermaid. Then what is she? You will have to read the story to find out whether they are able to save Marin by getting her to the ocean before she dies. Karen A. Noble writes the story The Mermaid Sisters because her younger sister Katie was diagnosed with colon cancer. She spent a lot of her time by her bedside as she suffered and shortly slips away. From her in the months that follows, her sister transformed from a vibrant, delightful, curvaceous mother of two into a thin, pain-consumed shadow. Carrie asked herself, what if her sister was changing into something else? Just what if a girl could transform into a mermaid? Well, that concludes my book talk about young adult fantasy. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.